How do you allow the person to open up when they're glossing over the yellow light?
That's a great question. So there's two techniques here, right? The first is the one that we already talked about, right, Brian? Where you see the yellow light, you see the shift change. So you give them the space because they're still present. They're present in that yellow light. They haven't left it yet. They've glossed over, but they're not talking about something new yet, right? They just ended the statement with, I don't really want to talk about it, but they're still thinking about it. So the first technique is the one we talked about, where you open up the door to vulnerability by saying something in line, saying something that is inviting to them to talk about your pain, something that builds a bridge. The second really powerful technique is something that we call silence, intentional silence. It's an elicitation technique that you use to get people to talk more. If you just give someone 3 beats is the magic number, 3 beats, right? Inside your head, you think beat, beat, beat. If they're not talking after those 3 beats, you go to the first technique. But a lot of times what will happen is within those first 3 beats, they will say something. They will say something that takes the conversation further down a road that you want to go down. Either they'll change a subject and be onto something safe, or they'll continue on the same road, right? Like the lady who might talk about her dog saying something bad happened to her dog. She might go a few steps after 2.5 beats. She might say, I really love that dog. I've had her for 7 years. Beat, beat, beat. She was a gift from my mom and dad, and I'm not really sure how to deal with it, right? Those 3 beats are a lot of times all it takes. It can feel like an eternity to you, but it happens in an instant to them.
This is really cool because I love teaching guys to use silence. I mean, it's a sales technique, right? Use silence, say less. Pickup guys used to say years ago, I can almost tell who's going to get the girl if 2 guys are competing for the girl, because the guy who's speaking the most is going to blow it. Almost every time. The guy who can handle the silence is usually going to do better. And so that technique right there, I love the idea of the beats though, because so many of the students are analytical and they get to, okay, let me just focus on this idea of a beat rather than waiting. And if I have to go more than 3 or 4 beats, then then I'll say something.
Yeah. Exactly right. So that yellow light is such a cool place to be, but once you spot it, you've got 2 techniques to use it.
Yeah. I've actually told guys just as a practice, because guys can't shut up. So I I'll sit them out and I'll say, okay, talk to a girl. And then what I want you to do is, once the conversation's connecting, I want you just to shut up and just stand there and just kind of enjoy the crowd, look around, and just kind of keep the connection. Feel her, be present, and see how long you can go without saying a word, and see if you can get her to open you back up.
Oh, nice.
If you go into your head, she's probably it's going to get awkward. If you stay really low and relaxed and calm and open-hearted, she's going to want to keep talking to you. And when you start to do this a bunch of times with different women, you're going to notice the difference. You're going to notice if you stay relaxed, they get pulled in. You go to your head, they walk away almost every time.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting process. I don't know if you've ever done anything like that, but it's fun to do.
Well, what's interesting to me is when you come across somebody who's naturally in their head, and then you see reflected back at you an untrained person, and then you just feel like the master at a keyboard, right? And you're like, I know how to do all this stuff, and this person's still trapped in their own head. And you're pulling them out of their head. You're bringing them into the reality. You're grounding them. And it's such a powerful thing, because that person just falls in love with you. Male, female, foreign general, nuclear scientist or not. Once you show somebody the joys of being present, they're addicted to it, and they just want to be around you more.
100%. It feels so much better. And I mean, it's prison being in your head. It's a horrible place to be. So what's our next question? Let's dive in. So you got one, Andrew? Igor, how much do these techniques become habitual, and what are the usual pitfalls if they do?
Oh man. So Igor, this is one of those private life questions. So the techniques become habitual. They become so habitual that they almost become second nature. One of the things that we often joke about at CIA is after a while, you don't have any real friends anymore. You're just friends with other CIA operatives, because every conversation, every relationship becomes this game of transactional science where you're trying to get more than you give. And that's a very unhealthy world to live in. It's a big part of why retired CIA people are very difficult to listen to or talk to or be around. If you see them as pundits on CNN or MSNBC or Fox or anywhere, you just listen to them talk, and their expertise is impressive, but you never in a million years think it'd be fun to have a beer with that person, because they have become so habitually rooted in this manipulative transactional game that they've lost track of true, genuine connection. And that's the biggest pitfall when it becomes habitual. And when that feeds into broken marriages, that feeds into failed relationships with children, that's bad business decisions, all sorts of things flow out of that, which is why the key is to understand the technique and to keep a constant focus on the intention. Why are you doing this, right? If your end goal is to build a meaningful relationship, that's a powerful end goal to pursue. Our end goal was always to steal secrets from a foreign government and make a traitor that keeps Americans safe. That's a very pragmatic objective.
Yeah, that's powerful. I have a quick question. Let me see if I can. I have to because you were just saying something that triggered something in me. Do you find where'd that question? I feel like I'm blanking on the question a little bit because I went like 3 different directions in my head and I started thinking about this. But do you find, I really want this question. It's going to come back. Give me another question. I'll find it because it's an important question. Oh, I have the question now. I had to rewrite. I reread his question and then it popped back into my mind because it popped in. Do you find that that students have a tendency to think about this stuff so much, like getting all these different systems and techniques, that they end up in their head because of it? And how do you keep them from doing that? Like one of the things I used to deal with in the beginning is I would teach all these techniques to banter better, rapport better, to play, and then they were thinking about it all the time, and I was like, you got to stop thinking about all this shit. You gotta almost have it as muscle memory. So can you talk to that?
Yeah, so I've got 2 kind of really relevant recent examples. So one happened just this weekend at our Urban Escape and Evasion course. I had a student there who had no background in physical conflict at all. 115-pound, 20-year-old boy, thin as rails, stood maybe 5 foot 5 feet tall, right? A small, thin whelp of a guy, the kind of guy that nobody wants to that you're never afraid of this guy. And I'm trying to teach him the physical defense techniques that can knock down an opponent 3 times his size, right? Something we call biomechanical advantage. I'm showing him how to use wrists. I'm showing him how to use elbows, knees. I'm showing him how to use weight shift, all these different things. And what I'm learning at each step of the way that I'm teaching this to him, he is becoming more and more in his own head. What exact angle do I have to turn my right foot to? What exactly, how far should my elbow be from my chest? Is my left shoulder too high? Like, am I supposed to be turning like this? I noticed that you were turning a little bit like this. And I had to pull him out of his head and say, look, man, you got to feel it. Like, your body is the weapon. You've got to feel how it all comes together, because how it comes together for your size and your stature is different than someone else. It's all about building the routine, building a habit, building a process that works for you using the core principles that I'm teaching you. And by the end of the training course, he was doing exactly that. He was breaking the grip of a 250-pound Marine who was able to wrap his arms. The poor guy's arms were smaller in radius than the Marine's grips, and he was still able to break out of that guy's grip with the techniques that we were teaching by getting him out of his head, getting him into his body. But you're exactly right that people like to go into their head when they start getting a system or a process. A lot of times you have to just reground them. You have to remind them that the system or the process is tailored to you. It's just like a good suit. It's not about the wool and the stitching. It's about the best wool and the best stitching being built to your size and your dimensions. If you like this short clip, make sure you click here to see the next clip, or here to see the full podcast episode.
So fresh, so